Manx Radio's Update with Dave Moore.
The time is 5 o'clock. You're listening to Manx Radio. I am Dave Moore, and this is Update. Welcome to the programme. Half an hour of the latest news in the Isle of Man, plus sport, business, travel updates, along with the newsmakers in person. Coming up, Tynwald members postpone a motion for £20 million asking for health spending. A legal expert known as Mr Loophole gives his views on the island's new 20-mile-an-hour zones. And seven-time TT winner Michael Rutter shares one of his favourite memories as he steps away from the Superbike class. That's all coming up in the next half hour. But first of all, with the Update News headlines, here's Chanel Saku. Faster Mai.
Tynwald members have voted to postpone a motion asking for £20 million additional cash for health spending. It's in excess of the budget for the Department of Health and Social Care, which was approved by Tynwald last month.
Without any significant detail and breakdown, how do we know that 20 million is not to pay for the 2 months that everybody's just had the time stopped?
Hospice Isle of Man is warning that the mandate to Manx care could have an adverse effect on specialist palliative and end-of-life care here on the island. In an open letter to Tynwald members, the chair of the Board of Governors has expressed concerns over the charity's future funding. And government is set to resume control of the Northern Civic Amenity site, keeping it open and operational for another year. From the 1st of April, the Department of Infrastructure will take over the facility from the NCAS committee, and subject to final contract, Ramsey Town Commissioners will operate the site on its behalf. In international news, it's understood a phone call between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin lasted at least an hour and a half. A White House aide says conversations between the two presidents about a plan for peace in Ukraine are going well. Police are questioning a man after a woman was killed by a van in central London. 2 other people are in hospital after the incident near Somerset House. And a man's been found guilty of stealing a solid gold toilet. The £4.75 million loo had been part of an art installation in Oxfordshire. Those are your headlines. News at 6.
Thank you, Chanel. Moving on to the weather and remaining dry with clear skies overnight. Moderate southeast winds and a minimum temperature of 3 Celsius. Similar tomorrow, plenty of sunshine, light to moderate easterly winds, a top temperature of 11 Celsius. Dry and sunny on Thursday, light east winds, a maximum temperature of 12 Celsius.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Cannell's Agricultural Supplies have been serving the good folk of the north for over 30 years, supplying homegrown wheats, whole and rolled oats, working clothing, fencing, animal feeds, parts, tools and emergency supplies. Call Julia on 880206 or find Cannell's on Facebook.
Patricia Wild Opticians is celebrating over 30 years of friendly, caring service in Farm Hill and Ramsey. Visit us for professional eye care with stress-free parking. Phone Patricia Wild Opticians on 813 977.
For over 25 years, Langness Maintenance Services have been the block paving specialists, including property maintenance, fencing and landscaping. Fast, reliable and competitive. For a free no-obligation quote, call Paddy on 49667. Langness Maintenance Services, 49667.
A ground source heat pump can save thousands of pounds a year, and you can harness this energy on island with Geothermal Limited, the water borehole experts. Visit drilling.im and see how a ground source heat pump borehole works. That's drilling.im.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
And we begin with Tynwald members voting to postpone a motion asking for £20 million additional cash for health spending. It's in excess of the budget for the Department of Health and Social Care, which was approved by Tynwald last month. Backbench MHKs Julie Edge and Laurie Hooper complained about the amount of detail offered by Treasury. That in turn was defended by Chief Minister Alfred Cannon and Treasury Minister Alex Allinson.
Without any significant detail and breakdown, how do we know that 20 million is not to pay for the 2 months that everybody's just had the time stopped? I find it really not transparent, totally inappropriate, and I won't be supporting it today.
We don't have a picture of what this is actually for. And even in the presentation which was given the other day, it was a very brief presentation, it seems that the department needs a certain amount of money for certain, but then a bit more money just in case, and that is also a little bit concerning.
The Treasury Minister has sent out a detailed email, and I just point to honourable members to say he went through exactly the same process for 4 departments last year and heard a detailed explanation from the Minister of why he was bidding for more money than he thought might be needed, because he just wanted to make sure that actually we covered all his bases.
I apologise that the memorandum was not on the order paper. It was submitted to the Clerk of Tynwald's office, and I'd be very grateful if the Clerk of Tynwald's office could see exactly what's happened with this, because unfortunately I've been accused in the past of also not publishing explanatory memorandum when they have been submitted by the various departments involved.
We're now going to vote, and the question is that leave be given to take this item today. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no.
No, divide.
Division called.
11 votes for, 11 against in the Keys.
Legislative Council, 6 for, 2 against. Therefore, item will not be taken today.
You're listening to Manx Radio. This is Update, a solution that will see the Northern Civic Community site kept open beyond the end of this month is being praised as a step in the right direction. Questions remain, however, about which local authorities are paying into it. From April, the Department of Infrastructure will take over the facility from the NCAS committee, and, subject to final contract, Ramsey Town Commissioners will operate the site on its behalf. In just a fortnight, the site was set to close to residents due to funding issues associated with Bride Commissioners withdrawing financial support. Chair of Ramsey Commissioners, Rob Cowell, spoke to Manx Radio just moments after this latest development was announced, and we asked him, how did it get here?
It got here through historic setup. The Civic Community Site Committee was set up, and everything's based off rateable value. That's how the Isle of Man works. 24 parishes work to that. Bride took exception to the fact that they were paying what they felt was too much for the site. They kept looking at it as a per household item, which isn't how rateable value works. So they obviously received money inbound, but they didn't want to pay it out as per the ratio that the rest of the island does, and they rose grievance to exit the site. Unfortunate, but it's their decision. Ultimately, it's legislation that lets us down in that it says that you may provide a civic community site. They obviously decided, well, we may not.
Did you know there was trouble brewing?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say Bride haven't been quiet in their dissatisfaction over the ratio splits for quite some time. To actually formally make that statement was a big move for them. And once they'd made that, it was a case of, okay, well, what are we going to do?
As it stands at the moment, are Bride in or out?
So Bride served notice to leave. I've taken the view that they still remain because the agreement is still historic. So yeah, I hope that they are still part of it. They say they're not, but we'll see.
Are they paying?
They served notice on the site at the end of September for the financial year to March, and the funding gap would lead you to believe they're not.
So what does that mean for Bride residents? Can Bride residents use the facility?
Again, that was a step that we spoke about as a committee. If they're not paying, how can they use it? But ultimately, there's nothing to stop anyone using a civic community site. You can't do that. So the site is open and everyone's using it.
Rob Cowell, Chair of Ramsey Commissioners, there showing how complex this situation is. There's been widespread praise for the staff at the Northern Civic Community site for continuing to work hard through what's being called a very uncertain and busy period for them. And we'll be hearing from the Infrastructure Minister, Michelle Hayward, on Manx Radio Breakfast tomorrow morning on this topic, after 8 o'clock.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Hospice Isle of Man's warning the mandate to Manx care could have an adverse effect on specialist, palliative and end-of-life care here in the island. In an open letter to Tynwald members, the chair of the Board of Governors has expressed concerns over the charity's future funding. Lewis Foster has this report.
Chair Christopher Hall says hospice's operating costs last year were £6.8 million. More than £5.1 million of that was covered by fundraising, bequests and donations, while £1.72 million was provided out of government revenue from Manx care budgets. Now, however, he says discussions about future government funding have been protracted and delayed, with Manx Care giving notice that the charity's uplift for 2025/26 will be just £38,000 to £1.755 million, well shy of the £2.414 million hospice says is required to maintain core clinical services at the current and required level. Given there is no agreement on future funding either, Mr Hall says it's led to serious financial uncertainty. He also highlights a steady decline in hospice's reserves, despite cutting headcount by 26 staff and ensuring that 80 pence in every pound donated reaches patient care. Mr Hall also points to the clause in the mandate which reads, "The funding model for these services needs to be reviewed during the next financial year to understand what is appropriate and sustainable." Hospice is asking for the caveat, this review should be progressed at pace and completed by the 31st of December, be added to that clause. Mr Hall says a funding model set clearly against an agreed level of service provision and which meets the Care Quality Commission requirement to have a formal agreement with Hospice Isle of Man can only be to the benefit of all stakeholders. Hospice Isle of Man has had recent excellent engagement with the Chief Minister, ministers and with a number of MHKs and MLCs, he says. To Tynwald members, he says, on behalf of our island community, Hospice asks for your support in translating this engagement into positive early action to prevent any unnecessary reduction in specialist palliative and end-of-life care, which so many of the people on the Isle of Man, both patients and their families, value and deserve in their time of need. Manx Radio has approached Manx Care for comment.
Lewis Foster reporting. The latest in a series of events hoping to bring health experts face-to-face with the public will take place later this week. 4 cancer consultants from Clatterbridge Private Clinic will be at the Villa Marina's Promenade Suite from 6:30 to 9:30 in the evening on Thursday. The free event's organised and hosted by the Manning Cancer Supporters Group. Derek Peters from the charity says they hope it can help reassure cancer patients given recent uncertainty over the future of service provision.
You know, we've got to put the smoke away a little bit and we do have to protect our services and I know there's an ongoing debate at the moment with the breast screening and, you know, that is going to frighten people. So we need to be aware that that's got to be fought for and charities and the public are fighting for that. But what we also need to do, life goes on a little bit and we need to reassure people that the Isle of Man is staying at the forefront of our thinking in terms of treatment and treatment pathways because it is scary and we do need to keep on the positive side of things at the same time making sure that our own government and our own healthcare professionals know that the charities are doing their best to ensure we get the best. But by informing the public of what's coming up and what treatments are out there and what innovations are out there, they're probably feeling a little bit better about their own treatment pathways and if they unfortunately do get cancer, and we hope they don't, that technology is there to advance. So we're not stopping still. Yes, we do need to fight and we need to be aware of the thing that's going on with the screening at the moment because that's really, really important. Because if that stopped people getting cancer and then having to listen to advanced treatments, that's not a good thing. So early detection and prevention is absolutely essential. But at the same time, we need to still be innovative and moving forward and keeping people informed and reassured about cancer treatments.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
All flights in and out of Ronaldsway are showing on time. The Manxman is docking as I speak. On the roads, a reminder that there could be delays at Braddon. Temporary freeway lights are in place on the approaches to the roundabout at the church for resurfacing. Elsewhere on the TT course, closed between Ballig Bridge and Cronky and also there are temporary lights at the Lord Street for the demolition of the old Salvation Army building, plus down at the bottom of Summerhill and Port Jack for street light replacement.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at
Quayside. The new 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in the island's residential areas are due to come into force next Monday. The restrictions have met with opposition from some motorists on social media. UK solicitor and travel expert Nick Freeman, more commonly known as Mr Loophole, has represented well-known folks such as David Beckham and Jeremy Clarkson in overturning traffic convictions, and he has strong opinions on the island's new proposals.
It's going to be extremely unpopular with the general motoring public. They will see this as them being used as a cash cow. It does alienate them from the authorities, which is something that the authorities don't want to do anywhere, probably more so on a small independent governed island like the Isle of Man than anywhere else. To me, it's completely pointless. It's counterintuitive. I drive all over the country, I do a massive mileage, and every time I hit a 20 mile an hour, I think you're obsessed with your speedometer. So you're not concentrating on what's happening around you. You're looking at that speedometer all the time, which I think is dangerous. It's carbon neutral. Journey times obviously take about a third of the time longer. Certain people, such as taxi drivers, are going to be very, very frustrated by it. Delivery drivers are going to be very frustrated by it because it's going to hit them hard in the pocket. It's expensive to implement. Wales implemented it, well, they did implement it recently, and I think the cost to the economy over a period of time is estimated at being £4.6 billion. It's costly to install, and of course it then needs policing, and I don't believe that the Isle of Man has the infrastructure that's there, and I don't think from a sort of a beauty perspective they want to litter their roads with cameras, which is unsightly street furniture. I think it's going to do the tourist industry a lot of harm. I know people, I live in Cheshire, and from friends anecdotally and myself, I don't really want to go to Wales anymore because it's just too slow. It's a beautiful place like the Isle of Man, but you don't want to be sitting at 20 miles an hour. Not only is it counterintuitive, but actually modern cars are not designed to go at that speed. You feel when you're traveling at that speed, actually, I might as well get out and walk. And of course, while some may say that's exactly what we're trying to achieve, that certainly doesn't work, and it's a ridiculous idea. Yes, have it on a dynamic basis in sensible places, but just to introduce it in all residential areas, it's unnecessary. It's not going to achieve anything any good. It's going to be very unpopular, and I just can't see the point in it, to be quite honest with you. And people are going to have to pay for it. Not only in terms of the fines, but they're also going to have to pay for its implementation and policing to make it work.
The public have until this Friday in which to voice their concerns with the government here about this. What should they say?
If anyone says it's road safety, the statistics don't bear that out. What the people in the Isle of Man should do is they should petition the government very hard and say, what is the point in this? Explain on a blanket basis, how is there any merit in this? And how are you going to enforce it? And do you really want to get everyone off the road accumulating 12 points in 3 years because they're not going to be able to argue exceptional hardship? Is that really what the government is about? Or actually, should we stick to our unique heritage, drive sensibly, and trust the public and just have the implementation of sensible speed limits?
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
That was Nick Freeman of Freeman Solicitors Manchester. The deadline for objections is Friday, with the new rules due on Monday. Now, this week marks 5 years since the Isle of Man government started rolling out restrictions and cancellations in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. On Monday, we heard from those who were in charge at the time. Today, we look at travel and how the industry has felt the impact of COVID-19. Director of travel company Van Travel, Tony Lawrence, says while it has been a tough few years, the passion for travel hasn't gone anywhere, adding, if anything, it's stronger than ever.
The last time I actually spoke to Manx Radio was 5 years ago, when the pandemic was just about starting. Nobody could have predicted the scale of what happened. We knew travel, we knew the world would be affected, but the complete shutdown of global tourism, the restrictions, the long-term changes of people how to travel, they were unimaginable at the time, really. And I suppose the Isle of Man, like everywhere else, was hit hard. Our borders were closed for an extended period, which was necessary, but devastating for tourism and local businesses that rely on visitors.
Has the travel industry since recovered?
From the travel industry, it's been a struggle. Yeah, it was like starting all over again. I don't think it's been a case of recovering, more about having to settle into change within the industry. Demand for holidays is actually higher than ever. People are desperate to make up for lost time, but the industry itself is still catching up. There are fewer staff, flight prices have increased, and some destinations are still struggling to fully reopen. Travel companies have had to adapt to new challenges, whether that's dealing with delays, cancellations, or changes in how people book their holidays. And we've also seen a big shift back to our industry, the travel agency industry, with, I suppose, with people wanting more reassurance. And obviously, we were there during the hard times when people were struggling to get refunds, to get, with the cancellations cancellations that people had to continue with. It was just a very, very difficult time.
You're listening to Manx Radio. This is Update. A series of events take place across the island later this month, highlighting the role hydration plays in overall health and well-being. Julie Hayes of NHS Cheshire and Merseyside will host the public sessions, which run from March the 24th to 26th. Director of Public Health, Isle of Man, Matt Tyra, says staying hydrated is hugely important, especially in later life.
Not drinking enough can have major impacts on our health and well-being. Dehydration can cause headaches, tiredness, and in older people can start to cause things like confusion, increase your risk of developing infections of the waterworks, so urinary tract infections. But as we get older, and particularly for people that we might be looking after, it can be much harder to spot signs of dehydration, because besides using things like blood tests, it can be quite difficult to tell whether someone's dehydrated or not. As we get older, things change, so our kidneys don't work quite in the same way as they do when we're younger. We're less likely to feel thirsty in the way that we do, again, when we're younger. And actually, the amount of total water that stays in our body, like our water reserve, it decreases as we age. Alongside that, as we get older, quite often we might start to develop more health conditions and be taking medications and things which might lead to us getting more water out of our body than we might have had before. So part of the reason we're doing the hydration events is to support people who are working in healthcare and people who might be looking after and caring for individuals at home, to recognise not just the signs of dehydration for those people, but also give them some hints and tips on how they can help people who might not enjoy drinking water to stay well hydrated.
It's not an issue then with people not knowing about being hydrated.
I think most people know that drinking fluids is a really sensible thing to do. So it's not so much around awareness more generally, although actually a lot of people with busy jobs find themselves in a situation where they might get stuck in a meeting for several hours and not find time to refill their water. That's important too, keeps our kidneys healthy, helps us to avoid getting into situations where we might have any problems with our health and general well-being from the fact that we've not drunk enough. But, you know, we can all be guilty of going through times where actually we should be drinking a bit more water. It's an opportunity to remind people about that as much as anything else. Drinking water, really important, keeps your health and well-being high, keeps your kidneys healthy, and we've not long had World Kidney Day, helps to avoid headaches and tiredness. But it's not just water. There are other things that will help us to stay hydrated. So fluid is good generally. People worry sometimes about tea and coffee, but within moderation, they can be hydrating. Diluted squashes, no added sugar drinks, milk, diluted fruit juice, all of those sorts of things can be really good at hydrating. But alongside that, we've obviously had the Smile of Man team out. Things like water, tea, coffee and milk are probably the best choices teeth-wise, because we want to avoid the sugary drinks that are going to damage our teeth.
All liquids does this apply to, though? Sorry, does this apply to all liquids?
I will draw a line at either poisons or things which we know will dehydrate you. So obviously excessive consumption of alcohol is something that will dry you out rather than, although it might be a potentially large quantity of fluid, it's not something that is going to be good ultimately for your body on a whole range of levels.
That's Director of Public Health, Isle of Man, Matt Tyra. Those sessions on March the 24th to the 26th in Peel, Castletown, Douglas and Ramsey. And you can get tickets, you can register for at hydrationpublicsessions25.eventbrite.co.uk. Sport now, and seven-time TT winner Michael Rutter has confirmed he'll no longer be racing Superbikes at the event. This will be his first year as a team boss in the British Superbike Championship, which is taking up a lot of his time. He'll still ride in this year's TT, but in the less powerful Super Twin class.
I'll be watching those two Superbike races and be jealous as hell that I'm not out there. But I've got to be realistic. I've got so much on with British Championship, with Storm Stacey, and obviously we're looking after Craig Neve on the road racing, and then we're helping the two Smith twins out on the 900. And you know, if it was just down to me riding a bike, I'd probably be out on a Superbike. But I've got a lot to worry about and think about, and riding the twin, you know, obviously it's a lot slower than riding a 240 brake horsepower BMW around the Isle of Man, and you need to have your concentration just on that job.
Can you pick a favourite big bike race that you were involved in at the TT?
Oh, it's got to be, I think, the Formula One race with Joey Dunlop.
Mm-hmm.
I can still see, Joey and me going round together, and I can still see him, the vivid picture of him like passing me down Sulby Straight, and you see his little Arai helmet bobbling away, going and bouncing off the bumps because Sulby Straight was so bumpy then. And having him come in at the end of the race, and Joey never said much, and he just I was just doing an interview with Motorcycle News, and then an arm come across and with a pint and a big Honda lettering down the arm, and he goes, Michael, I really enjoyed that, and that's like, it still gives me goosebumps now, and to race against Joey, and my dad raced against Joey. It does bring fond memories, and obviously 25 years. So I think, is it 25 years? I think he's obviously passing out. Oh my God, it's gone so quick, and brilliant memories.